Security officials in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia said on Wednesday the safety of the pilgrims had been the top priority preparing for this year's Hajj, announcing the completion of the first stage of planning for the annual religious gathering. The commander of the forces responsible for security at the Grand Mosque in the holy city of Mecca stressed that protecting worshippers was paramount. Major General Mohammed Al-Ahmadi pointed out that new arrangements had been put in place to control pilgrims' entry and exit to the Grand Mosque to ensure social distancing and effective precautionary measures against COVID-19. Global COVID-19 infections surged past 15 million on Wednesday, according to Reuters tally, with the pandemic gathering pace even as countries remain divided in their response to the crisis. United States has the highest number of cases in the world, with 3.91 million infections. The top 5 countries with the most cases are Brazil, India, Russia and South Africa. But the Reuters tally shows that disease is accelerating the fastest in the Americas, which account for more than half of the world's infections and half of its deaths. A Chinese-made vaccine against the new coronavirus entered the final stage of testing Wednesday in Brazil, where volunteers received the first doses of what officials hope will be a game-changer in the global pandemic. The vaccine, developed by private Chinese pharmaceutical firm Sinovac Biotech, became the third in the world to enter phase 3 clinical trials. Around 9,000 health workers across 6 Brazilian states will receive the vaccine, known as CoronaVac, in 2 doses over the next 3 months under the study. The lead developer of the vaccine said on Wednesday the University of Oxford possible COVID-19 vaccine could be rolled out by the end of the year, but there is no certainty. The experimental vaccine, which has been licensed to AstraZeneca, produced an immune response in early-stage clinical trials, data showed. Sarah Gilbert said it needed to be shown to work in late-stage trials there, needed to be a large quantity manufactured, and regulators had to agree quickly to license it for emergency use before large numbers of people could be vaccinated. Australia reported a record 501 new COVID-19 infections Wednesday, nearly 4 months after the pandemic supposedly peaked in the country. Most of the cases were reported in Victoria State, where authorities have struggled to bring an outbreak in Melbourne under control, despite Australia's second biggest city being locked down for nearly 2 weeks. Australia has now recorded almost 13,000 cases of COVID-19 and 128 fatalities in a country of about 25 million. Spain's Tourism Minister Rias Maroto said on Wednesday that a resurgence in the COVID-19 cases in Catalonia was coming under control, adding that she hoped this meant there would be no need for neighbouring France to close the border. Minister Maroto said the latest data compiled in Aragon and Catalonia, they are a bit more optimistic, adding Catalonia has already reduced the number of infections over the last 3 days. She said keeping the border open is very important for mobility with European partners. Sweden's top health authority says people who have had COVID-19 are likely to be immune for at least 6 months after being infected, whether they have developed antibodies or not. In new guidance published on Wednesday, the Swedish Public Health Agency said it's now considered safe for individuals who've been infected to come into contact with people in high-risk groups. But the agency also said that people deemed to be immune can still act as carriers of the virus in society and must therefore continue to observe social distancing and hygiene guidelines. Turkey's presidential spokesman said Ankara is adamantly opposed to Libya's partition, be it in principle or by law. Ibrahim Kalin, the presidential spokesperson, said breaking up the nation will be a devastating scenario and that lessons should be learned from similar cases in Iraq, Syria and other places. Libya has been mired in strife since NATO operations led to the overthrow of former dictator Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. The country's new government was founded 4 years later in 2015 under a UN-led agreement, but efforts for a long-term political settlement have so far failed due to a military offensive by General Khalifa Haftar's forces. US President Donald Trump, in a shift in rhetoric, has encouraged Americans to wear a mask if they cannot maintain social distance from people around them in an effort to curb the spread of the coronavirus. President Trump, who downplayed the virus in its early stages and has been focused on reopening the economy in recent months, despite an increase in cases, has been reluctant to wear a mask himself in public. Mask wearing has become a partisan issue, with some President Trump supporters saying being required to wear one infringes on their liberties. A spokesman for her National League for Democracy, or the NLD party, says Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi will be a candidate in this November's general election. The NLD spokesman announced after a meeting of the party's Central Executive Committee that Suu Kyi and President Win Myint will run in the November 8th polls. Suu Kyi was barred from becoming president by a clause in the constitution that was enacted under a previous military government. A shootout outside a funeral parlor left 14 people wounded Wednesday in Chicago as President Donald Trump threatens to send federal agents to a handful of U.S. cities led by Democratic mayors. Chicago Deputy Police Superintendent Eric Carter told reporters the incident started when occupants of a vehicle began firing at attendees of a funeral. Shootings have become abnormal this summer across the United States. According to local media, a total of 63 people were shot and 12 killed over the weekend in Chicago in ongoing gun violence. Deadly flooding will persist in Bangladesh for the next 10 days, officials warned Wednesday, as South Asia battles torrential monsoon rains, which have already pounded the region for weeks. The deputy chief of Bangladesh's flood forecasting and warning center said the flood has been going on for at least 20 days, adding it is likely to continue for another 10 days. The annual monsoon is critical for replenishing water supplies, but also wreaks havoc across vast swathes of the densely populated region, causing widespread death and damage. Hong Kong's Cathay Pacific Airways Limited said on Wednesday it had reached an agreement with Airbus SE to delay the delivery of A350s and A321neos and was in advanced talks with Boeing Company about deferring its 777-9 orders. The airline said the A350s due to arrive in 2020 and 2021 were now scheduled for 2020 through 2023. It did not provide further details of the number expected each year. It said for its $1.51 billion rights issue lodged with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, this deferral of deliveries is expected to produce cash savings to the Cathay Pacific Group in the short to medium term. According to officials, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, is set to announce on Wednesday the first proposed U.S. emission standards for commercial aircraft. The EPA proposed regulation would align the United States with the Civil Aviation Organization standards, officials said, and would apply to new type designs as of January 2020 and to in-production airplanes or those with amended type certificates starting in 2028. They would not apply to airplanes currently in use.